You're watching Viewpoint. Many thanks if you got in touch to send us some questions which we weren't able to deal with in the original 75 minutes section. The panel has kindly agreed to stay on and field your questions, so you'll be watching this on social media. The first question is for Minister Cortes. Teachers are sometimes abused, disrespected, often stressed, and the tortured souls of all professions, according to Jonathan, who's written in. We all have a teacher or two who saved or changed our lives in some way. Other than parents, no one else has the power to shape or impact children's lives just like teachers do. Like doctors, teachers need to be valued. Are they valued enough?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen it myself. I've had inspiring teachers who changed the way I was and what I did. I've had my children go through good teachers and less good teachers, and I know what both of them can do. And my grandchildren now. So they're absolutely valued. I have total respect and support for them. And as I say, they're being involved in this process. And I make it a point and hugely enjoy visiting schools and talking to them. So absolutely.
Edwin Reyes, should teachers be better paid?
Oh, by all means, yes. Because you see, what happens is teachers are sometimes expected to be jacks of all trades. It's not just the sparkling of the desire to learn in the student and helping the student achieve his full potential. The teacher acts in loco parentis, which means the teacher is the same as a parent during those school hours. And pastoral care plays a very, very big part within a school. It helps, the school ethos helps to make or break a child. And I would like to see things like counsellors being, specifically properly trained counsellors, especially at secondary school level. I think is a must. There's a bit too much burden at times placed on a teacher's shoulder who has to deal with matters that, because they're older, because they're adults, they try to cope with. But, you're expecting a professional reaction. The teacher is just acting out of sheer experience from life.
Let's try and deal with these questions quickly. Victor Gonzalez?
Of course, I'm going to say absolutely yes. Teachers need a pay review. And of course, the more you get paid, the more respect you get in society. Or it's a reflection of the respect you get in society.
Okay.
So to that question, absolutely yes.
Would government consider that?
Well, we look at formulas that are set up in the UK. If we're going to vary from the UK formula, then obviously that's something that has to be negotiated with the teachers' union.
Are you open to that possibility?
Well, at the moment we are looking, and in fact quite recently we've done something similar. We're looking at how the teaching profession now matches the UK requirements. If what we're looking is a departure from that, then obviously that would have to be channeled through the correct channels, and the government would have to look at it.
Okay.
But I must add, I know that we don't have a lot of time for this part, but I do agree that another way of supporting teachers is to reinforcing support in mental health, because teachers very often do act almost as counsellors themselves, and they do need more support, and we're looking at that too.
Okay. How will Bishop Fitzgerald, Governor's Meadow and St Martin's be relocated into the West Side School area? Is there enough space to accommodate each school? Will each school have their own facilities such as lunch hall, sports hall, etc.? This is a question from Kay.
Yeah. Yes, the calculations have been made, and there definitely is enough room. We have to see how we are going to reform it, and there are possibilities of perhaps adding a floor in some of the buildings, and we are having to look, when we engage with the teachers from those schools, which we haven't done in detail yet, to see what facilities can be shared and what facilities cannot be shared. But this is a process that will be ongoing.
Okay.
Could I ask John, was it ever considered as part of the possibilities to leave West Side where it is and build the comprehensive Bishop, Notre Dame and St Martin's on the other location?
It was considered, but what would have happened then is that Bayside would have moved to brand new locations, and West Side would have lagged behind, and perhaps the facilities wouldn't have been to a par, and then the schools would have been so different that I think we would have been more in the danger of, oh, my child is going to the new school, my child is going to the old school. So that was one of the main reasons why we decided that it was a good idea to rebuild West Side.
Okay, Mary asks, what is the government's thinking in respect of hot meals?
The government is committed to the provision of hot meals. This is obviously a challenge in itself because
In every school?
in every school, the different locations will need different models. In some schools, there would be room for the preparation. In others, St. Mary's being one, which is quite confined. And we are obviously going to refurbish and upgrade all the schools that we're not rebuilding. That's another commitment that we have. So we may have to look at different models, and there is a work stream looking at that.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, anecdotally, there are a lot of children who are relatively fussy eaters nowadays. Without that sort of history of school lunches, is this going to be difficult to introduce?
It might have to have a slow uptake. No? We need to look at it. We need to study it. We need to consult. There are a lot of fussy children, but school meals are provided in many parts of the world, and it works.
Okay. Melody says, parents have not been consulted on this matter, and it's a massive project.
On which? On all the schools?
Yeah.
Okay. It's difficult to consult all parents. Not all schools have parents' associations. Some of them do, and I've in fact met with parents from a number of schools who have the association. A lot of the teachers are parents, particularly of younger children. And certainly in the co-education, there were representatives of the parents. So it's something that, how do you consult every single person, every single stakeholders? But we are still in time to inform on the detail. And if any parent has particular views that they want to put forward, my team and my office is open to listen to them.
Okay.
I was still in time to consult the parents, something that Victor was saying before. The possibility of, although I understand John's point, I don't 100% back it. You know, a refurbishment of West Side School would mean you have two secondary schools with a slightly greater difference apart. It helps to create that inter-school rivalry that exists academically and in sports. So I don't see or haven't heard of any parent or having been consulted, you know, do you wish to have, you know, both schools next door to each other? Yeah, it's a possibility that's there. Other than, with the best intentions of the world, this consultative group have put ideas forward. But the ordinary parent, who is, at the end of the day, the parent of the pupil, has not had a word.
On the topic of parental representation in the decision-making process, how were parents selected to form part of the co-education group? How are they representative of the population as a whole?
Well, I can't answer that question because the selection was not done by me. This was a process that was started by my predecessor.
But you're a collegiate government?
Yes, absolutely. But I wasn't involved in the actual selection of the parents.
Okay.
There were parents selected from both West Side and Bayside School, but I wasn't the person who selected the parents. I suspect it may have been the professionals within the Department of Education, but I wasn't involved at the time.
Okay. Is there any policy rationale other than that competition is good to keeping the two comprehensive schools?
Yes, I think I mentioned some of these. Not just competition. If you talk to the teachers, they all, almost without exception, certainly the ones that have spoken to me, want to keep the identity of the two schools. They have their traditions, they have the way of running the school, they have the history, they have different emphasis, maybe in some of the pastoral work, they may have a slightly different view. They are very keen. And it's all about consulting teachers. That was what's coming forward. They don't want one school. Did
you also say that the empirical evidence suggests that a very large school doesn't necessarily work too well?
The empirical evidence is that 2,000 is the ceiling, and too much for a good school to operate well with all its different units.
What is the approximate cost of the construction of the new schools, asks Damon.
Okay, I'm not able to say that. Obviously, we're talking about millions. But because we are going to be putting the works out to tender, it is not good practice to estimate what we think it's going to cost, because it's
or to say how much. But presumably you are already financially planning that.
We have an idea of how much it's going to cost, yes, but I cannot say that because it could influence the tender process.
Okay, a question from, let me see, Natalie. What will happen to Year 3 and Year 7 teachers after the reshuffle? Will they be expected to move schools with the year groups, or will they stay in the schools they currently work in?
This is something that I'm happy to discuss, because this is something which no two teachers will want the same. We have to talk to the teachers. We have to talk to the teachers and the teachers' union. Some teachers have already said, well, look, I would like to move into the comprehensive school because I'm comfortable with Year 7 and I'd like to travel with it. Others have said, well, look, maybe I can retrain, maybe I can do the nursery, or maybe...
If I can throw something in, perhaps to help John, I'm glad to hear that, yes, broadly in principle, I think John is hinting that the teachers will be given as fast as possible a choice. When you undergo teacher training, whether you do a B.Ed or whether you do a PGC, you tend to specialize within an age range area, yeah? And my PGC was based on secondary school, and certificate actually says, you know, ages 11 to 18, yeah? So the age 11 is Year 7. You know, I did work in middle schools, and I was teaching those below 11. Your teacher's qualification allows you to teach throughout, and any director of education, any head teacher would use his human resources in the best way possible. And quite often we have very, very successful teachers. Some have even become head teachers who started their teaching life as a secondary school teacher and have ended up being a magnificent, out-of-this-world middle school teacher. You know, we all change in life. The same way we change, you know, the color of our hair, we change our way of teaching. And what we thought at the time was sort of our favorite teaching area, you later on tend to be fair. I thought once upon a time it was great to do examination classes. The real job satisfaction came in teaching years 8 and 9, preparing them, you know, for the options. That gave me more satisfaction than saying 20 students in a class and I've got so many great days at GCSE.
Victor Gonzalez.
The realignment of key stages again bring with it a lot of a change and a lot of spin-off effects. In a first school, for example, the Year 3 is going to be lost, but we're going to gain nursery provision. Not everybody is trained for nursery teaching, like Edwin has just said.
Those are preschool years, yeah.
The middle school, again, will have to change the way it works, but they will keep at least the core, the four-form entry, and of course the secondary schools will gain an extra year group. So that's all those needs need to be met. We need more teachers, like we've already discussed, at the secondary level. And one thing that is concerning as well is whether we need, in fact, to have a four-form entry, for example, in a four-form school of nursery classes. I'm not sure if there is a real need for that. I really don't know. I don't know the numbers.
Okay.
But something that I have talked with John as well as something to consider, and we've been talking about smaller classes. It would be a real revolution in education. If in first schools, for example, we would have the Wagner revolution. If in first schools, for example, we would have smaller classrooms instead of having so many, four in a four-form entry school, 4 new nurseries.
Yeah. Well, let's see what the Finnish trip...
I was just going to say half jokingly, but I think we may have to change the nomenclature of middle school back to junior school, no?
Well, we
may have to.
The change in year happened when comprehensive education came in.
Yes, but there used to be junior schools and then they became middle.
In the UK, the first and middle schools are a primary school.
There's low and upper primary.
Right.
Okay, gents, last question. It's from Edwin. It appears that I misinterpreted your question earlier, Edwin. So let's rectify that now. The move to the international baccalaureate in the UK there's a lot of discussion around that. To get away from the specialisation that the current system offers at an age of 16, when perhaps young people aren't necessarily ready for that. Is this something that you might consider?
Shall I answer first? Because the international baccalaureate has been long enough to go back to my classroom teaching days. I think it ended up being a preference of the individual teacher. Some loved it and some hated it. It has not, over the last 15 years, gained the popularity that at first it was being sold. Victor is far more up to date than I am. 15 years ago, it seemed to be the next best thing since sliced bread. 15 years down the road, I know of institutions, the private schools that teach English up the coast are slowly moving away from this international baccalaureate. We need to make life and here both of them are going to join me wholeheartedly, not as easy, as comfortable as possible, as achievable as possible for the students who have the academic ability to be able to obtain a place in university, United Kingdom, but the best university that is within the capability. And if that is continuing with all its faults, the current A-level route, why change something if it ain't broke? The International Baccalaureate is not a solution to the problem. It is the UK system.
The recognition is the same as A-levels and all the rest. So with that respect, it's fine. But I think I agree with you that some teachers prefer the syllabus from International Baccalaureate and others prefer A-levels and all the rest.
It's up to the individual, isn't it?
This would be driven by the professionals. This is not a political decision. This would be driven by whatever the professionals feel is better for education.
Very well said, John. Very well said.
Okay, well, that's where we leave Viewpoint tonight. Thanks again to our panellists, Victor Gonzalez of the Teachers Association, Opposition MP Edwin Reyes, Education Minister John Cortez, for fielding extra questions which we're posting on GBC's social media. Thank you for watching. Keep your questions coming. See you soon.